Come on in here. We got stuff to talk about. We always have stuff to talk about, but today a little extra. Finally, it's about time I got on here. It's about time you got on here with me. All right? So, today, we're going to talk about Occam's razor. You all know what Occam's razor is? I'll read you the definition from Wikipedia. Wikipedia says Occam's razor is a problem-solving principle attributed to William of Occam. Let's see more on Wikipedia. In science, Occam's razor is used as a heuristic guide in the development of theoretical models. Okay, this is all bullshit. Let me simplify this. Occam's razor is the idea that the simplest explanation, the one that requires the fewest variables and complexity, is more likely right than the thing that explains the same thing with lots of variables, right? Now, here's the problem with Occam's razor. It is magical thinking. Now, it might have some validity within the narrow confines of science, but once it gets out of science into the real world, it just becomes magical thinking. And the reason is that we all think our explanation of what's happening is the simple one. And I'm going to give you an example of where the Occam's razor goes wrong, or maybe it goes right. We'll find out. in the question of climate science. So what would be the simplest explanation for the climate science situation? Right? Now, you can almost immediately see how subjective this becomes. As soon as you say, what's the simplest explanation? Your first thought is, well, everybody's going to agree what the simplest explanation is, right? But we don't. Some people say the simplest explanation is, it's a hoax. It's all BS. Some people say the simplest explanation is the sun sometimes, is not always the same, and sometimes the sun, changes the heat. Some people say, hey, all this man-made activity causes CO2. CO2 warms things up. Boom, simple. End of the story, right? Notice how everybody's story sounds simple, but only to them. Your own story always sounds like the simple one. So that's the illusion of Occam's razor, is that you think simplicity is just something that exists, but it doesn't. Simplicity is purely your impression of that thing, and it usually means you know the least about it. So let's dig into this a little bit more. If you looked at the, let's say, President Trump's historical comment that climate science was a hoax. Now let's just call that BS. All right. So and a lot of people agree. Now, why is it that the scientists can't convince people with all of their science? Like, why is science not persuasive compared to somebody tweeting, it's a hoax? and the answer is, the simplicity is really, really persuasive, right? So while Occam's razor has almost no value outside of science, it has almost no value for ordinary people trying to figure out their reality, figure out what's going on. It has no value for that. But if you wanted to persuade somebody without any regard to facts, Occam's razor works really well. I used it as the basis for my book, God's Debris. I was writing for a character in the book who, according to the fictional story, was the smartest person in the world. And since I'm not the smartest person in the world, and I had to write dialogue for someone who was, I used this simple perceptual trick, which is the simplest explanation always looks persuasive. So I just put everything about, life and reality and the nature of, our existence, religion and everything else. I just packed it into the simplest explanation. And the book doesn't work for 100% of the people who read it, but a pretty solid percentage of the people who read it have a profound experience because they have the impression, and it's only an impression, that they're actually witnessing a conversation in which one party is actually the smartest person in the world who knows how everything works. So that's how powerful Occam's razor is as persuasion. As a way to actually understand what's really happening, completely worthless. Completely worthless. It's more misleading than helpful. So let's take the case of somebody who believes that the whole climate science thing, the simplest explanation is, well, it's just all made up. And somebody says, well, okay, if it's all made up, that's not so simple. How could you possibly explain that all these scientists doing all these different tests, they're all agreeing? And then the person with the simple explanation says, they all have the same financial incentive. We've seen it numerous times. When the financial incentive is on one side, you get the same answer every time. And then people say, yeah, but peer review. And then the simple answer says, have you seen recently the studies of how often peer review gets it wrong? Really, really often. Like really, really often. So peer review is worthless. Now that doesn't mean it's worthless. I'm just running you through the explanation of the person who has the simplest explanation. It's always going to look simple to them. There's nothing you can say that will unsimplify it. It just stays simple because they're locked in their confirmation bias. Now take the position of the scientists. For them, it's simple too. What could be simpler than almost all the scientists are on the same side? Bam! Ultimate simplicity. Perfect simplicity. All the smart people who've looked into it, mostly 97%, they're all on the same side. Can it get any simpler than that? Then you say, well, that's not so simple. Tell us about how you got there. CO2 created by humans warms the atmosphere. Boom, done. We drew a graph. Simple as pie. CO2 warms the atmosphere. All the scientists agree. Boom, we put it on the graph. It's easy to see. So, and if you're joining late, I'm not giving you my opinion. I'm running through the fact that persuasion-wise, everybody thinks their side is the simple one, the one that has the simplest explanation. And that's why you can persuade people with other simple explanations. You want to see an example of this work? President Trump talking about immigration. What does he say? Build a wall. Now you say to yourself, that's not so simple. You need funding. There's different terrain. I'm not even sure we need a wall. And what about this? And what about the construction? And will people vandalize it? And should we put a solar panel on it? And shouldn't it be fenced in some places? And shouldn't we have digital surveillance in some places instead? Because it's the kind of terrain you wouldn't want to put a wall on, right? Now, if he tried to sell that, how far would he get? He wouldn't get anywhere because people would just say, we're already working on border security. We already have a patchwork of solutions across the border. His complicated solution just wouldn't sound compelling. It just wouldn't be influential. So what does he do? He Occam razors the fuck out of it and just takes it to its simplest form. You can see it. It's visual persuasion. You imagine your own best wall in your head. And suddenly people are saying, yeah, fuck yeah, a wall. Give me a wall. I understand a wall. So beware of the simplest explanation. Because if you believe that the reason you hold your view is that your view is the simple one, you are almost certainly in some form of confirmation bias or cognitive dissonance or some combination of the two, because everything's complicated. You just might not know the complications. Yes, somebody wrote CO2 equals the wall. It took me a second to understand what you want. I'm going to block that user for the name that cannot be mentioned. Yeah, so the climate scientists have their version of the wall. CO2, bam, simple. So that persuaded half of the country, and then the other half said, it's bullshit, bam. They're doing it for money, bam, done. All right. Miss you on Game of Thrones. I'm sure that is reference to some character on Game of Thrones that looks like me, but I don't want to know what that is. Oh yeah, and drain the swamp. So here's an example of what I call strategic ambiguity. Now, strategic ambiguity, I've got a piece in my upcoming book about that, is when you give yourself, you've got an idea that people just imagine any way they want to imagine it. So I forgot I saw Tywin Lannister there and it completely threw me off my point. By the way, do you have any idea how hard it is to read comments and talk about a complicated topic at the same time? Oh, drain the swamp, there it is. Yeah, drain the swamp was brilliant because we all imagine what that is differently. So it doesn't have any particular meaning except, generally speaking, you're getting rid of the bad elements that have been around too long and do weasel things. But what does that exactly look like? Does that mean nobody with a business background in government? Does it mean no lobbyists? Does it mean campaign finance reform? What does it mean? And the simple answer is, sort of means whatever you want it to mean. And that's why it works so well, because nobody has a reason not to like it. I heard drain the swamp and I thought to myself, I have no idea what that means. But I'm pretty sure there's some good stuff in there for me. There probably isn't, but it feels like there is. It's like, I don't want that swamp. I want that swamp drained. That must mean something. Let's go do that thing that I don't really understand and has no specifics. And even if I knew the specifics, I might not agree with them. But hey, drain the swamp. Occam's razor. Yeah, and swamp is just a great visual. So if you think about it, build the wall, drain the swamp. Think how visual those are. ISIS cutting people's heads off, putting them in cages and drowning them. Visual, visual, visual. Now, remind me, what is the Democrats' new slogan? How many of you remember what the Democrats have decided is their new slogan for 2018? Can anybody remember the slogan? Oh, I'm just waiting to see if anybody can remember it. Like the big impact it had on the we are losers. Look at the other guy. Yeah, you can remember parts of it, right? Something about better jobs and better wages. You remember it was something about pizza. By the way, it's like their persuasion people are it's like the gang that couldn't shoot straight. Try to think of one thing that let's think of two things that would be the worst thoughts to put in your head if you were trying to brand your party. One would be dead babies, which is what Carly Fiorina decided to make her most memorable moment in politics, describing a dead baby video. Clearly, maybe the worst persuasion move of all time. But then the second one is accidentally associating your jobs message with a pizza delivery. Because you know what I think about when I think of pizza? Not good jobs. I'm not thinking, there's a tech job for me delivering pizza. Not so much. And of course, there's most of you know that there was the Pizzagate conspiracy theory that there was a pizza parlor involved in child abuse and satanic things. As far as I know, none of that is true, but you certainly wouldn't want to attach your brand to it, even accidentally. better skills, jobs, wages. But think about it. So they're going up against Make America Great Again. Great. And what did they put up against great? Better. Well, we'll make a marginal improvement. If you give us enough time, things might, start leaning in the right direction. Kind of hope. Or Make America Great. Or, well, your jobs might be better. We're hoping your wages go up a little bit. It's the weakest message you've ever heard from all messages. Who was behind their Hitler persuasion? A secret that I get into in my book. But most of you know who I think was behind it. Well, no, let me clarify. The Hitler persuasion, persuade, was probably just spontaneous, and it's just something that everybody says about Republicans. The dark slogan that came out over the summer before election, he's dark, everything he says is dark, it's a dark message, it's a dark message, that almost certainly came from an expert, and I give you my idea who that is in my book. Yeah, better together. Yeah. Nobody's finding the pedophile ring. I'll believe that when I've got like a lot of. It would take a lot to convince me that any of that's real. I always thought the Democrats, maybe their new slogan should be, "We're not really trying anymore," because it reminds me of an NBA team where they're so bad that they start playing to lose toward the end of the season so they can get a better pick in the lottery, in the draft. It's like, well, we look like we're playing to win. Well, we're not really trying that hard because might as well just lose. No point in winning. The Mandela effect. I do know that. So yeah, it'll be real interesting to see if Anthony Scaramucci, new communications head, will modify the message. Well, he will modify the message because you put anybody new in the job, and that's what's going to happen. All right. Why am I not 50 pizzas ahead, you might ask? Yeah. Craig Sawyer is finding it. Well, I don't think he's finding what you think he's finding, but I haven't looked into it. I'm going to say without looking into it that there's nothing there. So here's the thing with Pizzagate and other conspiracy theories, is that confirmation bias is so strong that when you say to yourself, no, just look into it, you're going to see that the evidence is rock solid. What you may not know, and I hope you'll know after I'm done with you, is that the fact that there's tons of evidence and all that evidence is rock solid doesn't mean anything. You think it does. You think it at least means, well, I see it could be wrong, but there's so much evidence, That's the difference between someone who's trained in persuasion and someone who isn't. Someone who's trained in persuasion sees something that's just tons and tons of evidence. All the experts are on the same side. And people with my training say, well, it would be ordinary, just completely normal if they were wrong. The ordinary person thinks that if all the experts on one side and you've looked at all the evidence yourself and it all seems consistent with whatever prediction or outcome or statement people are making, that all of that evidence, all pointing in the same direction, means something. But it didn't mean anything for lots of different topics through life. It didn't mean that the McMartin the McMartin school case was real. It wasn't. They had tons of evidence that said it was. It didn't mean that Trump was going to become Hitler when he got inaugurated, even though it looked like there was tons of evidence to the people who believed it. To the people who didn't think that was realistic, there was no evidence at all. If you looked at the food pyramid, my favorite example, there was tons of evidence that the food pyramid was valid. And now we know it was just sort of influenced by industry. There was no validity to it at all. Global warming, we talked about that already. The first mind to upload to the Matrix should be me. Well, I've told you that the big risk is that AI becomes intelligent and then evil and moves against people because it doesn't have any ethics or morality. And I've said that you should upload me to it first because I would be like a computer virus to the AI. I would infect it with my ethics and morality. So if you make me the first super powerful AI, I will simultaneously inject ethics and morality into the AI, which will be a superpower like 10 minutes after it reaches the singularity. The only downside for you is that I'll be, obviously an all-powerful dictator who will rule the world forever. But I think that's a good trade-off compared to being completely owned by the evil AI. Hey, I want to run another idea by you. How many of you watched or listened to my Sam Harris podcast? Just give me a yes, no. I want to get a sense of how many of you listened to it. The Sam Harris podcast, you can find it on if you just Google search my name and Sam Harris, it'll pop up. So the biggest complaint I heard from both Sam Harris and many of his followers, is that I didn't speak enough about the ethics or the morality of what we were seeing in Trump's actions. Now, I was caught off guard by that because I know he kept pressing that point and he kept asking about it and, why aren't you worried about these lies, or I'm paraphrasing. And I thought it was a given that people get to decide their own ethics and morality. You don't ask a cartoonist to do that for you. And I've jokingly been saying to people who on Twitter who keep saying, "Oh, Scott, you dodged the question about ethics. You dodged the question about Trump's honesty. You dodged the question about his lies, his many lies." And my response to that is, it's not that I dodged them, which it's true that I didn't respond to them directly. It's that that's not my domain. That's the domain of the watchers. It's not the domain of the person on the podcast to tell you your ethics or to tell you your morality. How does that work? You're supposed to tell me. Don't look to me. So I was jokingly saying that I would accept the job as their pope, the pope of atheists, because a lot of Sam's followers are the rationalists, the atheists, because he is. But I had this realization later after dealing with all these people who surprisingly thought that I should be giving them my opinion on ethics and morality, as if that was somehow a useful or appropriate thing to do. And here's why this caught me off guard. See if you agree with this. It's just a hypothesis. All right, let me start with the parts I think you agree with. Sam Harris is one of the two most famous atheists in the world. True? Are we correct so far that Sam Harris is one of the two probably most famous atheists in the world? Right? I think you agree with that, right? Now, what is the biggest complaint that religious people have about atheists? Work with me here, folks. What's the biggest complaints that religious people have about atheists? Come on, you know it. What's the biggest complaint about atheists? Got it. They're unethical. The biggest complaint about atheists is that they themselves, having no God, have no source of morality or ethics. Sam Harris, master persuader, magnificent bastard, just had a huge 2-hour podcast that got a lot of attention in which he took the high ground of morality. What could be better for his brand than the atheist who's not only saying, yeah, we atheists, we got some morality, leave me alone. No. Not only did he not leave me alone with my own view of what is ethical, he banged the table. He put his shoe on the table. He yelled it. He climbed to the top of the mountain and said, ethics, morality, atheists have ethics, atheists have morality, look at me. I'm the atheist in this conversation, and I'm the only one bringing up the ethics. I'm the only one talking about the morality. So, if you listen to the, by the way, I don't mean to mock the way he was saying it. I'm just trying to make my point. I'm a big fan of Sam's, by the way, just to be clear on that. I think what he does is a very important voice in the world, very important. One of the top important voices, I would say. But think about his personal problem being that voice, is that he has to live in a world where everybody thinks he's an unethical, immoral, just dick, right? That would be his biggest problem. As a social creature, trying to live in the social world and even trying to sell products. He tries to sell books, probably, I assume he does some speaking, I don't know about that. But it was very important for him to take the high ground, which he did. He took the high ground of morality and ethics, whereas I was treating it like it wasn't relevant to the conversation because it's just something people figure out on their own, and why are you turning to the cartoonist for that? So I wasn't making the point that it was unimportant because it's important to individuals, but it's also an individual decision. I'm just helping you see Trump for his technique and the tools he uses, maybe look at the outcomes a little more objectively, and then make your own decision about whether the ends justify the means. By the way, a lot of people who criticized me and said, "You just keep saying the ends justify the means, you immoral bastard." To which I cleverly say, if a terrorist, I cleverly say that I would lie to a terrorist to save your child. You're welcome. Do the ends justify the means? Sure, lots of times. Not every single time. But, that's how absolutists, people who don't have an argument, push your argument to the extreme so they have something to attack. I've never met anyone who didn't try to balance ethics with, staying alive and, other important things. Is there anybody who ever lied to their spouse about how much they liked their new haircut? Even though it's unethical to lie, you're all better off if you do. So, it's a personal choice everybody makes. Anyway, so if you do watch or listen to the Sam Harris podcast with me, keep in mind that he's doing one of the best persuasion, association, high ground moves you'll ever seen. So while I was in a conversation with Sam about master persuaders and whether they're ethical or not, he was master persuading me, and it took me several days to figure out that what he was doing for his brand and his positioning as the ethical atheist was frankly brilliant. Which should be no surprise because he's brilliant. All right. Am I religious? No. I'm pro-religion, though. I'm not a believer, but I'm very much in favor of religion as a tool, like many tools, could be used for good, could be used for bad. But there's so many people who use it for good that I have to say, well, it's a tool. Every tool gets used for bad. I make perfect sense. That just means you agree with me, but I appreciate that. Sean King. So how many people think the volume is low here? Let me ask that, because no matter what device I'm on, I hear somebody tell me the volume is low, and then other people tell me it is not. Can you give me some volume feedback here? Yeah, I'm pro-religion, but I'm not a believer myself, because religion makes people happy. It has real world benefits. People are happy when they're practicing religion. I don't think you can. You admit you got skunked. So the other thing about the Sam Harris interview was people got to see the two movies on one screen really clearly. If you look at his Twitter feed, it would be filled with people saying, "Man, you tore that idiot cartoonist Trump supporter apart." And if you look at my Twitter feed, it's people saying, "My God, you hypnotized him, and everything you said was brilliant." The truth is probably neither of those things. So some people say volume is low, some say just fine. I wonder why. I'm going to look at where is my volume hole? I wonder if it's covered up. I'm going to try to adjust the... All right, how about that? Did that change the volume at all? I cannot tell where my audio input is in here. All right. Likely their own settings on their own devices. Volume is just right. Yeah, my thinking is if the volume is just right for anyone, I missed that comment, but just reminding you again that I'm blocking all the users who mention that name. The initials are J and P. If you ask me if I have seen somebody whose initials are JP, I block you. And not for any reason other than my feed gets filled with that question unless I start blocking people, because they just won't go away. I have nothing against Jordan Peterson, by the way. Better if you could be louder. It's low, just watch the replay. Yeah, I think I'll do that. I will watch the replay. All right, that's all I got for today. I'm going to go. I got a lot of work to do. I just finished my copy editing notes on my book, which means we're close, so close. All right, so 2 comments apart. Somebody says it seems good now and it got louder, and somebody else says it's too low. It's on the bottom right is where the... Yeah, I don't know. All right. You listen on 2 devices and it's a bit low. It's perfect for cult leading. Thank you. All right. I'm going to get out of here. Remember. Oh, no, it's not Jack. No. Remember. Don't win small when you can win bigly.